So welcome, Sean Anderson from AreaPro. And this is going to be a great, I think, tutorial to get our agents up and running as far as how to use AreaPro in their business, how to set it up, and also how to give you feedback later on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean. Sean, tell us about yourself and how this came about.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate the opportunity. This is fun. This is fun. I was telling you, Wes, yesterday, there's a soft spot in my heart for Tennessee. It's where my wife's from, and she's the greatest human I know. So I think Tennessee raises good folks. So anyway, I'm born and raised in Idaho, and been selling real estate for 18 years. And I have a business degree. I got a business degree at BYU, and then jumped into a software company for the first 2.5, 3 years of my career, not as a technical guy, but more as a project manager, client support, client relations, that kind of thing. And then after about 2.5, 3 years of that, got into real estate and kind of brought the business and the numbers and the analytical side. And that's kind of been my niche in real estate is just tracking numbers, building systems. And so early on, I remember it was about a year into selling real estate, I realized that the reports that were coming out of our MLS just didn't give me what I needed, but they had the functionality of allowing me to export pretty much anything I wanted. And so about a year in, I went back and just started doing exports as far back as our MLS had gone. This was 2007, and our MLS launched, we used Navica, and that version was launched in 2002. So I went back and exported all the data from 2002 and just started building this database of listings. And it got to be this huge Excel file, and over time just started building reports. And today what it is it's a 28-page, we call it the Market Pulse, and it's a printed publication that we generate every month for our agents. And I realize that 90% of our agents don't go past the first 2 or 3 pages, which is okay. It's designed to start very high level and be graphically appealing, something that you would sit in front of a client and show them. But then for the more analytical types, there's details that go further and further in. And so a couple of years ago, John Parker's on the call. He's a close friend. He was actually at that software company 21 years ago. So we've known each other that long and always talked about doing something together. And a couple of years ago, we finally decided we have to turn this from this massive Excel clunky file into something a little bit more elegant, easier to access, cloud-based. And that was Excel's the limit of my technical expertise. So I knew I couldn't do that without him. So we brought him on, and we partnered up on this project. And then about 6 months after that, we started talking to Ben about Place. And in our conversations with the real estate partnership with Place, we also had told him what we were working on the technology side. And he got pretty excited about that and said, John and I we built 2 products. One was a showing feedback product, and the other was a market metrics product. And so we put them both in front of Ben and said, okay, which one of these makes you more excited? And he said, showings are cool, but market metrics by far is something I could get behind. And so when we partnered with the real estate, we also rolled in this technology company. It didn't have a lot of traction at the time. We had maybe 30 to 40 subscribers here locally. And so then we partnered with Ben, and now we're just rolling. So we pushed it out at Built How. So you guys were all of you at Built How?
I was, and Jana was. I don't know who else was on the call.
Cool. So, and I know we talked about this a couple of times in the Place call too, so I don't want to be too redundant because most of you by now have heard about it. So we can that's a little bit of the background. Mike and you asked me to kind of talk about that story. 5 years ago, my real estate team and Mike's real estate team, for 10 years, we've just been kind of pushing back and forth, first and second place in this area, in this market. Mostly him first and me second. He's been a legacy in this area for a long time. If you're with Keller Williams, I don't know I know some are, some aren't. He's the founder of The Promise. So a lot of folks that are with KW have heard about Mike Hicks from that. I understand you guys have a Mike Hicks in Tennessee too that sells real estate.
Yeah, he's on our team.
Okay. I am here. It's funny.
That's you, right on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's a good name. Well, Mike happens to be from Tennessee as well. So anyway, so 5 years ago, the two of us just went to lunch, and we had a mutual friend, went to lunch and just said, what would this look like if instead of like competing against resources and agents and clients, we actually lined up and partnered in our business and did this together. And it took us about 6 months to develop that partnership. And so for the past 5 years, it's been Anderson Hicks, and it's been a blast. He's been awesome to work with. And we call him the wise old owl. He's very even keeled, very steady, really smart. and just works harder than anyone I know. He's the first one to the office every day, last one to go. Just an awesome guy. So it's been fun. It's been a great partnership so far. So yeah, so that's the kind of the background of our real estate business and our AreaPro. I will tell you, it was funny, when John and I partnered about a year ago, we created this little mini commercial here in our office, and we had Mike basically do this like a little bit of a cliche, and we just asked him, like, what if you could only take 3 things on a listing appointment, what would they be? And he said, my pen, my pants, and my market pulse. And so that was kind of that's it. I mean, that's how important this is to us. Our agents, they start learning about it very, very early on in their onboarding. I learned really early that if I could show up at a listing appointment or a buyer consultation and establish myself fairly early, not in a pretentious or arrogant way, but just a I don't know, just a humanly way, that I was an expert on the market, then like 75% of the battle was won as far as converting that client. So my goal in a listing appointment was to establish myself as a market expert and a marketing expert. And if I did that, then I would get their business pretty much every time. So my conversion rate was very high, not because I'm charming or funny or anything like that, but because when I went in there, I knew how to read the person and I knew how to present data to them in a way that was meaningful to them. We have is anybody from East Tennessee on this call, like Oak Ridge area? No? Well, you guys know about the lab in Oak Ridge, right? The government facility out there. Everybody knows about that. We have almost an identical facility here in Idaho. In fact, we have transplants back and forth from Oak Ridge all the time. So heavy engineering population in this area. So I knew if I was talking to an engineer or if I was talking to an artist or anything, then I could guide that conversation in a way that was meaningful to them. And so AreaPro, if you've seen it, it's basically right now, if you know anything about software, you know the term minimum viable product. And it's basically, what is the least amount of functionality that we could roll out in version 1 that would test the concept to prove that this was worth going further into and investing further into. And so when we sat down with Ben and with John to decide what the MVP would be, we decided it was this. It was the Remo. And it's page 2 of our market report. We have that page 1 is a little bit more graphic. You guys have probably seen something similar to this. So this is just kind of a higher level. We use this a lot for social media advertising and things like that. But we skipped that even and just went to the Remo, the real estate market overview, and just built that in our cloud base. We said, okay, what kind of data do we have to get to feed this? And how hard is that to get from the MLSs? It's extremely hard, by the way. It took John and I a year to get 2 MLSs. And Ben, that's one of the reasons we brought this product in with Ben, because he already had 300 plus established with his relationships and with Brivity. And so that was a massive value for us to add that. So we built the Remo. That's all the AreaPro is right now, is a 1-page report called the Remo. That's minimum viable product, and we're proving that out, and then we will expound. Go ahead, Wes, you have a question?
Why don't you show us some of the ones you've set up and some of the things that we look at when we look at those now?
Yeah, you got it. Let's do it. So I'll just share my screen here. So this is, as you log in, you're going to see a list of your areas here. I was telling Wes as we started this call, we will up area counts. Right now, I think when you start creating an account, it has a limit of either 3 or 5, depending on when you created your account. We've moved away from area limits. So just my information is in the chat. And so you can email me. Or you can post your email in the chat right now, because John is in front of his computer. He could start upping area limits right now as we go. So you can push this out as many as you want. We really have no concerns. And so you can build areas based on, well, first, let me just show you the report. This is the digital version of what I was just showing you. This is my county here locally. This is Bonneville County. And these are the most critical metrics for Bonneville County, starting with the month supply of inventory. To me, that's number 1. If I could only take 1 metric with me on a listing appointment, it would be the month supply of inventory. And so that, because it's obviously that's the ratio of what's selling versus what's available. And it tells the story of whether or not someone's in a buyer's market or a seller's market. So this is, we kind of spoil the story here. We debated whether we put it last because it's a function of some of these numbers, but we just thought, hey, whatever's most important needs to go front, top and front. And then of course we can build the story this way. And this is what I do with clients. I walk them through this and I kind of tell them what's happening. This is high level, so it's not to be confused with a CMA. A CMA is obviously that's very granular. It's got property specific data. This is more aggregated information to just paint the picture of what environment their house is sitting in before they enter the market, or what they're going to buy in before they enter the market. So it's painting the landscape so that they go in educated on what type of a market they're in. I like to tell that story before I tell a market of what their specific house is. I think it's important for them to understand the environment before they start to think about a very specific price on their house. And so we pull this up in our listing appointments and buyer consultations, and we walk through it. And we can go, sometimes people have a real specific idea when we start what their house is worth. So we can drill in. I start with the very high level and talk about the whole market. But of course, if somebody has a house that's over $1 million in Bonneville County, they're in a very different market than someone that has a house in, at 350,000. For example, 350 right now, our average sold price is 322. And so between 3 and 350, there's a 1.9 month supply of inventory, and that's a pretty strong seller's market still. But as you get a little bit higher, between 6 and 7, that one's starting to tip towards a buyer's market. And then of course you get, this is a little surprising to me right now, but it's only because we only have 2 houses on the market in our county between 1 and 1.25. But then over 1.25, we have 16 properties for sale, and we're only selling 1 a month. That equates to a 16-month supply of inventory. So you better be pretty sharp. You better have an amazing house that's priced well, that shows well with a strong agent, if you're going to have any chance of selling a house in that category in our market. So before I keep talking, let me stop there. I mean, that's only a brief intro, but just so we can get some dialogue, what are questions so far based on what you've seen or observations?
You clicked on something to get to that. How did you do that?
Well, there's 2 different ways to expand. So right now, if I click here, you can see these numbers will refresh to that market, and this up here refreshes and it drills right into that same market. So this is just a higher level grid, but all of these numbers are right here just laid out. So if you're talking to a high D and they just want to get right to the point, then you might want to speed up your journey a little bit and just show them this grid, show them the entire market of 2.2, and then show them their price point. So, and again, I know this gets a little tricky. It's a little bit of a volley back and forth because we haven't yet talked about the CMA. So I haven't told them yet what I think their house is worth. But in our consultation, when we set up, we do a seller interview and a buyer interview when we're setting appointments. We always ask what they would like to get out of their house. We say, in a perfect world, we know you've been watching the market closely and you probably watch Zillow. What are you hoping to get out of your house? And that's what our ISAs ask. So we go in knowing what they're thinking their house is worth. So that helps me in this conversation drill down a little bit, even though I haven't yet talked about a CMA and talked about what I think their house is worth. So did that answer your question, Wes, as far as how
It did. And it also looks like it filters some stuff automatically as far as your price points. Tell us about that.
Yep. Let me actually jump over to one of your areas in your state. It'll be a little more interesting for you. Let's look at these price points. This is the average American price point. We should say, like, a nationwide average price is going to generate brackets that look like this. But Brentwood, as we know, is not average. When we go to Brentwood, these price points update. And we have all the way from 0 to 750 is bundled into one row, and then we get more granular. So this is kind of our luxury price bracket, and it's designed to just update based on what data is coming out of the system. But this is Brentwood right now. And so as I click these numbers right here, sorry, I'm scrolling too fast. If I click this number right here, it's going to update this grid to that segment. And so right now we're looking at a 10.5 month supply between 2 and 5 million in Brentwood. And that includes all of these brackets. We call these larger chunk segments, and then the brackets are inside there. And then I can drill even further clicking that. And as I'm clicking there, it's refreshing these numbers. So I can start with the client at the highest level and then take them all the way down to their price point. So, and that can go one of 2 different ways. That can go countywide. Like, for example, is Brentwood in Davidson or Williamson?
It's in Williamson County.
Williamson. Okay, so this is a broader view. This is the entire county of Williamson. So I might even start there. And then maybe I go into their town of Brentwood, and then I go to their price point of 4 to 4.5. And now we've told the story. We've led them right to where they're at.
And one of the things you and I thought was interesting, if you scroll down and we looked at the overall, and we looked at the difference between that 3 to 4 million range.
Yeah.
I mean, it jumped to 34
Right
months
here.
supply on hand. Yeah. I thought that
Yeah.
was really something that really told a different story.
It's so interesting, and I like to use fishing analogies a lot in real estate, because I feel like when we list a house, that's what we're doing. We're fishing for we're trying to reel a buyer in, and so the house is the bait, you know, and so and the different price points in the different areas are the pools, or the, you know, kind of the different fishing holes. And so now, obviously, if you own a house, you can't move your hole, you can't move your location of your house. And so you know that you're not going to change the fact that it's in Brentwood. And you're probably not going to change, you know, whether it's 3.5 or 4. You can try with a list price, but you're not going to influence the value by changing that. So what this is about them understanding, okay, if I can't just reel in my line, walk down the bank 100 yards and cast into a new hole, I'm stuck in this hole right here. Then I've got to figure out what strategies I need to maximize my chance of getting bites. And that's where it's really important for us to set this stage, because they're the ones that want it. You want them to be the one that comes up with this idea of it's time to drop the price, or maybe when we list it, we should be more aggressive. If you're in a 34-month supply market, I mean, there are 17 for sale, and there is half a house selling every month. So one house every 2 months. You've got to be in the top one of 34. You've got to really stand out. It's got to be incredibly sharp and aggressive on the price to have a chance of having someone nibble the line. And so that's helpful for them to know. So did that answer your question, Wes? Or
Yep, that's perfect, because I think that's a great way to talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is awesome. I'm not the greatest at going through the MLS and putting, pulling the numbers out and making it look nice. This makes it a real simple tool, and it easily, not only for the client and for us to explain to them, but just for us, to understand at a very high level, at an easy look, and get granular with it. But I think, yeah, it's cool, like just how it's laid out very easily, and then you can dig in more, obviously, like you said, with your CMA. But it is just it makes it really simple to see them.
cool, good. Thanks for the feedback.
Now, also, when you download the PDF, it looks different.
It does.
You can kind of cover
And
that.
this is version 1 of the PDF. We have a ticket in right now to enhance the look of that, but it's functional. It gives the headers are a little bit inconsistent right now. That's what we're working on, but it does the same thing. Before I do that, though, let me show you this little toggle right here. People, when they first see this, feel a little bit restricted by the only choice of 3 and 6 months, because we're so used to going in the MLS and entering custom date ranges and searching back. When we're looking for a CMA, you've got to have, when you're looking for comps in a CMA, you have to have the ability to set that date range, whatever you need to go back and pick specific comps. For us, that's not necessary. And we wanted to keep it simple and elegant. And so really the only thing that does is it helps you. So we have some agents that only want to go back 3 months worth of solds to get the average sold per month. Because this right here, let's go to just your all segments so we get a larger number. This right here is a necessary component of the month supply of inventory. It's one of the 2 variables. All we do to get this is divide 69 into 315. But when I'm calculating an average, I have to go back a certain number of months and divide by that number to get an average. And we had a debate early on in our local market. It was a KW team meeting. There was probably 50 agents in the room, and some people were saying, you can't go back 6 months. It's too far. It's going to influence that too much. But in Idaho, our seasons changed so much. In January, we'll sell 50% of the houses we do in July because of the 2 feet of snow that we're going to have. And so for me, I've always wanted 6 because it stabilizes some of that seasonality. So instead of saying, well, let's pick one, we decided to give the user the function so you guys can decide. In our case right here, well, in your case in Brentwood, the absorption rate, or I keep calling it absorption rate, the month supply of inventory, 5.5 if we're only going back 3 months. And if we're going back 6 months, it's 4.6. So that's fairly significant. So you're going to want to decide which one you think is more relevant. So that's just a quick 2-minute intro on the date range. That's why it's not a custom field. But let's download the PDF so we can show you that. Up top here, there's a spot in the settings to enter your images. There are 2 image locations for you guys to enter. And we have a knowledge base at AreaPro. John, if you'll post that in the chat, areapro.com/support. And that has some getting started tutorials, because you asked Wes, like, where do we even start? First thing is you're going to want to load up which MLS you're in. You're going to want to add your graphics there. We use our team and place. This is just my test account. Our local MLS requires us to have our brokerage, which I assume yours does too. So our team account has our brokerage, or has the Keller Williams brokerage in here kind of mixed in with Anderson Hicks, but you need to use 2 different logos so you can customize that how you want. Let's see, let's go to our download. Where did that go? Right there. So our vision was that agents would be walking into appointments with an iPad or a tablet of some sort. You can access AreaPro on your phone, but that's more for you to look at. I wouldn't try to show a client, because there's enough numbers. There are enough numbers on the Remo that it's a little hard to see on your phone. But if you're trying to answer your own question, it's great to pull up that way. Our vision was an iPad, so everything's designed to look really nice on that in these consultations. But we realize not everybody takes iPads on consultations, and so you could just as easily print this out before you go, and it shows you your Remo. One of our things, we're going to switch this so it actually is consistent with the application to put this higher level view on top and then the grid below, but it's the same thing you see in there. And then we have the different segments. We have one for each of the larger segment brackets, so you can have that, have that with you as you go into the appointments if you want to do that. Or you can download this and email it to a seller. Some of our sellers, we have one agent that emails the Remo to all of his listings every single week, because he takes enough time in the appointment to teach them what it is and how to read it. Then he wants to keep them informed as it changes throughout their listing. And so he sends it to him, and he says rarely is he ever having to ask for price drops. Usually they're calling him and saying, man, there's 26 houses selling every month and we're not one of them. Something's off. Let's get that price a little more aggressive. And that's awesome when you have a seller that comes to that conclusion themselves.
Walk us through how you set up an area now.
Okay, awesome. So under settings, first we need to make sure that your MLS, I've got RealTrack right here. So let's do this. I'm going to delete RealTrack. Do we have anybody from Chattanooga? So is everyone from the
Just do RealTracks, that'd be fine.
Okay, perfect. So we'll leave that. And then once that's set up, you can go into the configure areas and then add an area. So what's another county over there that I haven't done, Wes? I've done Williamson and Davidson.
Let's do Wilson County. That's going to have Mount Juliet in it and Lebanon.
Okay. So this is just a really simple one. You can actually group counties. So I'll set that one up in just a second as well. Let's say I want like a greater Nashville area. So I don't know if this is what you'd call it. I'm just making stuff up on the fly, but let's do Williamson. And let's do Davidson. And let's do Wilson. Are there any others that would fit in your kind of your region?
Those would be the main ones right now. There's some other ones further south, but I think those would be the main ones.
What did you say?
I think those would be the major ones.
Oh, okay. I thought someone else threw out another county.
Somebody did. Okay. Go ahead.
Nope. Okay, cool. So I'll show you the construction page. When you click on a new area after you've built it, you're going to see some wheels spinning in the background. So the first time we construct an area, it takes a little bit of time on the back end to go build the query, gather all the data. But then from then on, it happens every single night, the refresh happens, so that anytime you pull an area after the first time, it loads instantly. So don't be alarmed when you see this construction page and think, man, I couldn't just sit there and wait for that inside a consultation. You wouldn't ever have to do that. And that's why we allow admins to set up areas and not agents. This is more designed for you as operators or team leaders to create the areas that your team would need. And then when they're in their consultations, they're just calling them up from a menu. And that's instant for them. So if we allow agents to do that, if you've got 20 agents on a team, you're going to have 5 of the same area, all called something slightly different. You've seen when they add labels in your CRM, and you've seen when you kind of give free reign like that. So that's why admin privileges are required to construct areas. But we'll do Wilson because that one will be ready. So you saw how fast that was to add, and now it's ready, and it would pull instantly every day from here on out. So there's a 3-month supply in Wilson, 700 active homes. Let's see. So your average, this is a little bit more of a, I don't want to say average, but just a little bit more normal price ranges than Brentwood. And Brentwood is not normal. I think it's the highest average that I've seen of any remos that I created. San Francisco was the previous winner, but Brentwood trumps that one by far. So this is Wilson County. Let's go see if that larger area is ready to go. Not quite. But it takes 3 to 4 minutes and then it'll be ready. Questions in the meantime while we pull that. That show you what we wanted to show, Wes, on building that area?
I did. Now, one of the things, as we get feedback, they should be emailing that to you and John. And what's John's email? Is it john@areapro.com or?
Yep, that's it. John, you want to post that for us?
And that's JON
Yeah, there's
at.
just yep, no H.
Okay, and yours is Sean, SHAWN @areapro.com.
Yep, and I appreciate you saying feedback too, because we really want, that's what Ben is after with this place release, you know, and it's going to be, that was one of the requirements of partnering with Ben, is that it's free for place forever. And so as this continues to grow, you'll have access to it. And really the only thing that we ask is that you're willing to just share with us the good, the bad, the ugly. And, you know, Ben asked me a great question last week. He said, and I told Wes this yesterday, he said, right now, I think we have a great product, but I still think people could live without it. It's cool and they'll probably use it, but if it went away, I don't think anyone would be burning our houses down. He said, I want people to burn the house down if this thing goes down. So what is the one thing or two things that if we added, this thing would be an indispensable part of your business? And so if that thought comes to mind, shoot it our way. We have a good system of capturing requests and feedback. We can't just go implement everything as it comes in, but we prioritize. And we, you know, like one thing that our highest requested feature right now is to be able to dice up areas based on property type. So that's at one of the, you know, the top of the list after we redesign the dashboard and roll out a few other things. Then property type is important because it comes up in almost every demo that I do. So that's an important one. But things like that, please shoot them my way and we'll organize them and group them, and then we'll update our users periodically on which ones are in the roadmap to come out. And that would mean a lot to us if you do that. The other thing is that down the road that, you know, that you're willing to share it with other agents. That would be awesome as well. Oh, Wes,
Question?
yeah.
What's the charge for AreaPro right now? If another team in the market center says, that is really cool.
We don't know yet. We're waiting. We've played with some different price points. Yeah, we don't know. We're thinking, you know, I would love to see $99 a month for like a small team, but I don't know that we're quite there yet in terms of the functionality. It's not like an extremely complex product. However, the time that we save and the opportunity that we think that this will help conversion, I think when people start to put a value on that, then I think that we're going to have a better shot at moving that price point that we're hoping for. It's not like a 99 cent a month or a, you know, there's just too much behind it. The data is the most complex part by far. When we get a feed coming from an MLS and it's got all different field names and field types and missing properties, and it takes sometimes months to clean that up, that's a lot of the complexity. So
Jana, go ahead.
Yeah, Jenna.
Good morning. Yeah, so I guess my question is, if you have this on a listing appointment, we're sitting having conversation, big picture, here's what the market's doing, here's the months of inventory, this is where I see you kind of landing in this on this chart. You know, it's almost like, let's put a X marks the spot where your house is, Mr. Seller. You know, the next question they have maybe like, okay, let's get to my specific house, because that's what I really care about, you know. So what is kind of the next question or the next thing or whatever that you see that I pull out of my bag of tricks after we have that kind of sky view conversation a little bit?
Yeah, great question. That does segment perfectly into the CMA at that point. And sometimes they're going to want to go there early, and you just have to kind of use your judgment if holding off. Sometimes it's helpful to hold a little bit and make them want it for a little while, but other people, you may irritate them enough to just lose them. And you have to kind of be willing to flex a little bit, and that's, or be flexible. And so for me, I always, when I was in a listing appointment, I don't go on a lot of them anymore, but when I'm in a listing appointment, I want to talk about the market first, because that's neutral ground. If I start off saying that we have part of our consultation that's called Why Anderson Hicks. And it's a segment about us being the marketing expert and why it's so important to hitch your wagon to the most productive team in the area that does the most business and creates the most traction around your house. So that's an important part of it. But I found that if we start with that, then it feels a little salesy. So I actually start with the walkthrough on the house, excuse me, because that's the most neutral ground. I walk through the house and I build rapport. And I know we're getting off AreaPro a little bit, but there was one year I did 221 listings on my own, because I did 4 listing appointments a day. I had ISA setting appointments, and I had a driver, and I just would go from appointment to appointment, and I would convert listings and turn them over. And so I got pretty dialed in on this practice, and I would tweak things. I'm all about Kaizen, if you've heard that, which is just constant and never-ending improvement. And so I'm always analyzing how are things working. And the practice that I found worked best in a listing appointment was, first of all, build rapport by seeing their home and walking through it and allowing them to share the story of their house. You know, I've heard some agents come and teach and say, don't ever do that. It's a waste of time. Like, don't walk through with them, leave them at the table and go walk through it, because you can do it in 2 minutes. For me, building that rapport was really important. So it's the most neutral ground. That was 10 to 15 minutes. And then I would move into the market, because you're still on neutral ground. And again, that's when you start to establish. And I tell them, first, I want to tell you the kind of environment that we're about to list your house in. It's important that you understand what's happening in the real estate market. And that would be anywhere from 3 minutes if I had someone that literally didn't care about numbers or didn't understand numbers, or it could be 20 minutes if I had an engineer that just wanted to know everything. And then we would move into the CMA, and it just transitions nicely into that. And I would practice that with, inside the team with your agents of, now if we're going to introduce a new component into the listing presentation, which is the REMO, which probably isn't new. Most of you are probably already talking about the market. But you just kind of think of this funnel, high level down to low level. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, Jana, but just the transition of, okay, now that we kind of understand, and you asked a tricky question. It is a little bit hard to decide where on the REMO to focus if you haven't yet done the CMA and established what their price point is, but usually you know what they're hoping. And I would start there. I would say, you had mentioned when you talked to my ISA that you were hoping around 450. So let's look at that bracket and see how that bracket's performing. And then if I showed them, and I thought, in my mind, I'm thinking 450 is crazy, but I'm not going to tell them that yet. Then we show them the comps and hopefully help them come to the conclusion that maybe 375 is more realistic. Then I can circle back and I can show them the 375 row to help them understand that. But so from the REMO into comparable properties, and they like that transition. I don't know if I answered your question, Jana, but.
Yeah, no, it was good. Yeah, I mean, of course, I would also ask, where are they going to put their finger down and say, this is what Zestimate says?
Yep. Yep. I go into every appointment knowing what that number was too. And that was helpful. Luckily in our area, most people we don't have enough data in our area for Zillow to generate an even remotely accurate Zestimate, and consumers know that. So luckily we haven't had to battle that too much, because they know that sometimes it's 20% high, sometimes it's 20% low. So that's been really helpful, because we just don't do enough volume for Zillow to get close.
Yeah, Zillow's a great one to say, gosh, Zillow only gave you, it's right at 406. Like, what do you think about that? Like, man, they're doing your own.
Low for you guys most often?
Yeah.
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah, that's helpful.
Well,
it's hard when they are expecting 500 because Zillow told them 500 and you're actually, it's 400 max. That's a little bit more challenging.
Especially FSBOs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Great question. Other questions?
Sean, thank you for your time today. This has been very helpful to us. Good. I'll get it out to everybody and also post it in the Our Happy Place so people can see it and get some more information. So,
okay, awesome.
Hopefully we'll get you and John very busy.
Yeah, I hope so. Hit us up and let us know how we can make it better for you guys. And we appreciate you taking a look at it and giving it a shot.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Yep.